really amazing. Okay. I'm saying the legacy that's being created here.
Nice. It was co-ed, and I like that. It was really nice.
Okay, we're back onto Tanya, guys. Today we're learning Tanya. Now, for those that missed it, last Tanya session, the Tanya class that we had last one was on Tuesday. We actually did a fly through of the next 9 chapters of Tanya. So if you missed it, I just want to highly recommend that you actually review it, because it was really interesting to be able to get a bird's eye view of where we're going. Because whenever I learn Tanya, I never want to get stuck with losing sight of the forest because of the trees. You always want to remember the direction that we're going in, because it's really, really easy to get stuck in the place that you are, getting stuck in like some nuance or some detail and forgetting the bigger picture. So that's what's really nice about being able to learn the Tanya on a more of a macro simultaneous with a micro level. So here we're holding today. At the bottom of page 36, we're actually learning from the practical Tanya. If you have a copy, if you don't have a copy, I highly recommend you purchase one. It's available online. I think we have them for sale here at the shul as well, if you contact the office. So we're learning today about the doctrine of the 2 souls. Now, what we're about to learn today is an absolutely sensational chiddush. The word chiddush means a novelty, like a revelation, something new. Achamim, come and join us. Come join us. So this idea of what the Alter Rebbe was about to introduce to us was a novelty that mankind was not aware of until the year that the Tanya was printed in 1795, I think it was. The idea that there's not one of you, there's 2 of you. It's an OMG moment. It's like, what? Seriously, I'm as human beings, and this is a point that I was talking last night. I had to be in Miami, in Brickell. I went all the way down there, 2.5-hour drive in traffic. So I was there talking there was an extremely wealthy man there, who is a very, very wealthy Jew, but he was so faithless. I mean, I happened to bump into him over there. I was talking to him. He was so faithless and so condescending and so obnoxious. He like dismissed me. He tried to dismiss me as if to say, I know who you are because you have a beard. Judging a book by its cover. I know what you believe because of the yarmulke on your head, right? Over generalization. And I know what you want. It's only my money. And he was ridiculing. He was being obnoxious and about faith. Like, how can you tell people about this Baba Maisis about faith? And I said to him, I'm thinking, what am I going to say to a person? I've got to give him a one-liner. That's all he's going to be able to receive. So I said to him, you might not believe in God, but God believes in you. And I just wanted him to have that one-liner just to think about. That you might not believe in God, it's okay, but God believes in you. And I wanted him to realize and think, look at this blessing that you've experienced in your life. And I said to him, so if the only thing you believe in is money, and he admitted, I said, what about the rest of us that don't have what you have? What, then everybody's just a mistake? Everybody's just an extra on the set? I said, God believes in you. Try to figure out why, right? So I think that as human beings, we've evolved to the point, I say this point often, that we've evolved to the point that most Americans believe in God. Conscious people understand that you don't have an effect without a cause. That there's a creator, there's a designer to this building, to the Empire State Building, and there's a designer to this world. But to believe that God wrote a book that he gave to us, that's a little bit much for us to accept. We can accept that there's an infinite God, but to accept that an infinite God cares about a finite me, and it's this week's Torah portion, really, because if you think about it, the Torah tells us about God creating the world in about 31 verses. 31 verses, the entire creation of the world. But how much time does the Torah spend telling us about man creating a home for God? Half the book of Exodus. It's about 350 verses. Okay? So think about this. When God creates a home, when an infinite God creates a home for a finite man, 31 verses, no big deal. But when a finite man creates a home for an infinite God, that's half the book of Exodus. Think about that. For us to be able to host God is such a novelty. It's so unique. It's so counter to our self-perceptions that we need the Alter Rebbe to gently coach us through this. And here's where the Alter Rebbe tells us that we actually have, we have such a hard time relating to ourselves. People in general, they love to distract themselves. Hobbies, vacations, golf, or anything but spending time with myself. Anything but I'll watch TV, I'll binge on Netflix. It could spend an entire weekend watching 18 episodes of Fauda or something, right? And if you think about it, at the end of the day, how much time did you spend with yourself? It's tragic. Not even 15 seconds, if you think about it, right? That's what prayer is about, by the way. Davening is an opportunity to connect with yourself. Shabbos is an opportunity to connect with yourself. And now the Alter Rebbe is taking us by the hand like a curator through the Louvre. And he's saying, look, let me walk you into you. Let me introduce you into you. Let me allow you to stop yourself from stopping yourself. Here goes. Okay, so with that introduction, let's get to know who we are. Who is this soul? In chapter 1, we're only going to talk about the first soul, which is the animal soul. And that's a big deal, Marty. That you said the first soul is the godly soul. You would think that the first soul is the godly soul. I have to comment on this because this is an absolutely stunning revelation. According to the Tanya, the main dominant soul is our animal soul. Right? Our godly soul is only our dominant soul if you're a tzaddik. Now we've learned what a tzaddik is. If you've slaughtered or tamed your animal soul. But the rest of us, according to the Tanya, your dominant soul is your animal soul, your natural soul. In chapter 29, the Alter Rebbe says so explicitly. He says that when Hillel, the elder, would go eat, he would tell the students, I'm going now to grant kindness, to be philanthropic to the wretched one. He's talking about his animal soul, right? He's like, I have this homeless guy within me that I got to take care of him. Right, so I feed this homeless guy, but my identity is my godly soul. Says the Alter Rebbe, but that only applies to tzaddikim, the ordinary people, the Beinanim and the Rasha. Their true identity is the animal soul. But it's the Rebbe that makes the earth-shattering revelation. The Rebbe, he makes the earth-shattering revelation that he says that is only true bechitzonius, on a superficial level. On a superficial level, ordinary people identify primarily with their animal soul. But on an inner level, on a pnimius, it's like Marty said. That's what the Rebbe's novelty is. That on an internal level, every single Jew, even the ordinary, the Beinani, and even the Rasha, is identified by their godly soul. And I'm going to extend this a little further now. Let me just read a little bit inside because I want to show you. I always like to connect what I'm learning. We're on page 36, and I'm going to give you this stunning revelation from the Rebbe, an unbelievable revelation that the Rebbe is about to share with us. Let's just read a little bit because it's always important to connect what we're learning with some text. Our Rebbe, yes, our Rebbe. So bottom of page 36, the doctrine of two souls. Okay, the doctrine of two souls. Here we introduce the central concept around which Tanya is based, the doctrine of two souls. I'm primarily going to do today just the bold face. Okay, let us turn to an explanation. Based on what Rabbi Chaim Vital of blessed memory writes in Shara Kedusha, Gates of Holiness. You know when we've learned the gates of trust, right? This is Gates of Holiness, which is about 200 years or 100 years after the Gates of Trust. This would be by Rabbi Chaim Vital, who was a student and the scribe of the Arizal. The Arizal wrote nothing. The greatest Kabbalist of the past millennia. The Arizal wrote nothing. He passed away at the age of 32 or 34 years old. But it was his student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, that wrote down everything. And in Eitz Chaim, also based on the Arizal, section 50, chapter 2, over the page, that every person in Israel, both tzaddik and rasha, possesses two souls. Bottom of the page. As the verse states in Ezekiel, I believe it is, a verse which refers to one individual. It says, for this is what the high and exalted one says, the spirit that enwraps itself is from me and the souls which I have made. Sorry, it's Isaiah. Isaiah says, he's talking about one person, and he says that one person has two souls plural. So that verse in Isaiah is the origin of the doctrine of two souls. That is the origin of the doctrine, right? Over the page 38. Shehein shtei nefashos, these are two complete independent souls in their own right, and not merely levels within a single soul. Nefesh achas mitzad klipa, one soul stems from the egocentric forces known as klipa. Now I'm going to stop here for today, because it's this one line that I want to elaborate on, and the stunning revelation from the Rebbe. So nefesh achas mitzad klipa means the first soul comes from klipa, from superficiality. This is the animal soul, which the Alter Rebbe is going to elaborate upon on the rest of chapter 1. So here, the Alter Rebbe identifies, and he says that our main soul is our animal soul. It's the soul that originates in superficiality. This is the soul that is influenced by how things look and not by how things are. This is the soul that is rooted in that superficial level or realm of holiness of God, so that the only thing that matters to this soul is superficiality. This soul is the one that judges a book by its cover. This is the soul that sees the trees, not the forest. Deals with what's in front of him instead of the bigger picture, right? And this is something we have to make peace with. It's just a reality we have to make peace with. And it's interesting. So we at Chabad here take full advantage of this doctrine. The awareness that our soul, that our primary soul, comes from superficiality. So we know that if we can dress something up nicely, it's going to attract the Jews to come even. There's like inner secrets here, so don't share this. Don't tell anybody what I'm about to say. only YouTube, right? So what I'm about to say is that people might have a problem, let's say, with the mechitza. They might have a problem with the mechitza, right? Sure. They might have a problem with observant Judaism potentially, right? But if you dress it up nicely, they'll come. This is how we manipulate this truth of Tanya chapter 1. So in other words, if you can make a nice invitation, which hopefully should be arriving in your mailbox today, please God. If it's nice, if it's pretty, then people will come. If you can create the smoke and mirrors to make something seem exciting or look attractive, even though the substance is something that they might not totally identify with, it's not going to matter. It won't matter. People choose form over 10 times out of 10.
Is coming today.
How did you know that?
So do I. Yeah.
Mickey, you're unbelievable.
So we have the super deluxe kiddishes.
Exactly. So,
Or an entertainment.
yeah, I believe you, Mickey. All right, thank you.
Are you bringing?
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you. So, okay, my connection is unstable. There's something going on over here. Please wait while we're trying reconnecting. I think I just said something that was too intense for the internet to process. But I want to give you a quick example of this idea. If you had to choose between safety, I want you to think about this. If you had to choose between safety or comfort, now think about this before you give me a knee-jerk answer. If you had to choose between safety or comfort, what would you choose?
If you think about it, or if you do it very quickly.
Knee-jerk.
If you think about
What's
it,
the
you'll
knee-jerk
get
answer?
safety. Your knee-jerk is always take comfort.
So it's more comfortable to drive without a seatbelt.
Yeah.
It's more safe to drive with a seatbelt. It's more comfortable to ride a motorbike without a helmet. It's more safe to ride it with a helmet, right? Why did they need to invent the motorcycle helmet law? To protect the heads that weren't smart enough to protect themselves, right? This is why they created the motorcycle helmet law, right? Because mankind will choose comfort over safety 9 times out of 10. This is proven experiments, human social experiments.
The real answer is it depends. It's Maslow's theory of.
Now you're getting technical. But when you deal with ordinary people, that are rooted in klippa, souls that are rooted in superficiality, that's what they go for. And if you want to, and let me tell you, you can manipulate this principle with your children. You can manipulate with your spouses. What you do is that even though you might have done something wrong, okay? You might have done something that wasn't nice. But what happens if you say it with flowers? What happens? How does this make sense? How does this even make sense? Why would the flowers matter?
All's forgiven.
Klippa. This is why Tanya chapter 1, because of these words we just read, that soul is rooted in Klippa. Because once we learn this truth, that our main soul is rooted in superficiality, this is why you might have really insulted someone. But if you can send them a nice card, or if you can find a superficial way to put lipstick on the pig, it's going to fly. And by the way, who are we going to choose as president? Who are we going to choose as president? The one that knows what he's doing, but has a stutter, or the one that doesn't know what he's doing, but he speaks like Barack Obama? Who are you going to choose?
That's a loaded question.
You see where I'm going with this? People, we're unbelievably superficial. We're shamelessly superficial. But don't feel bad about it, the Alter Rebbe says. Don't feel bad. This is who you are. Just learn to use it. The Rebbe, you may remember a mimer that we learned together, Garments of the Soul. In Garments of the Soul, a mimer of the Rebbe totally manipulates this principle. He says, if you want to change your inside, you want to change your spiritual inside, you know how you do it? Change your outside. Change your thought, speech, and action, TSA. If you just behave and speak and think like a Jew, what's going to happen is your inside is going to change as well because the Rebbe is totally manipulating this. But here's the idea that I want to share with you to finish the lesson today. The idea I want to share with you is that the Rebbe gives us such a stunning chiddush, second chiddush today, on what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The Rebbe says that every single time that a Jew does a mitzvah, even if he's a Rasha, every single time that a Jew does a mitzvah, he is experiencing infinity. Because remember, what's a mitzvah? A mitzvah is the will of God, right? The will of God. God is infinite. My soul is infinite. My godly soul is infinite, right? So when my godly soul does a mitzvah, I'm making a bridge from my infinity, my godly soul, to God, which is, I'm making a bridge. So I've created an infinite hook, line, and sinker. Is that the right term in this context? I've created a hook, line, and sinker of infinity with God. That defines me, even if I'm a Rasha, even if I'm eating treif and, don't even believe in God. Doesn't matter. By experiencing that one mitzvah, the infinite light that I am now experiencing overshadows everything, every other component of my identity.
Before you do treif.
No, you shouldn't say bracha. But my animal soul is finite. Think about it. My animal soul is finite. The Rebbe says you couldn't possibly identify with your animal soul. You couldn't possibly identify with the animal soul because it's finite. It doesn't last forever. Your godly soul is infinite. It lasts forever. How could it possibly be that your infinite soul is secondary to your finite soul? Now, is the Rebbe arguing with the Alter Rebbe? No. The Alter Rebbe is saying, in our experience, on an external or superficial level, it seems like we identify more with our animal soul than we do with our godly soul. But let me just finish this point. But on a true level, on an essence level, in terms of truth, where is our true center, our true core? It's an infinity. Infinity versus finity doesn't hold a candle. So therefore, our true sense of self, our true sense of identity, our core, our center of gravity is really our godly soul. And so even though here we just said that the first soul is from Klippa, it's interesting because here he says one soul. It doesn't say first soul. He says one soul. In the beginning of chapter 2, if you just turn to chapter 2 for a moment, on page 44, you'll see the opening words of chapter 2 on page 44. It says the second soul in the Israelite. The second soul in the Israelite is the so-called divine soul. So then he does call it a second soul, right? So the way that the Rebbe explains it is that it's not an argument with the Alter Rebbe. It's an evolution. We start our journey in a way where we first identify with our animal soul and secondary identify with our godly soul. But as we become more conscious, we realize that our core truth, our core essence is really our godly soul. So if you ever feel like you're experiencing imposter syndrome, when somebody says, Rabbi, I'm linked to fill in, but I can't link to fill in because it's not how our family does it. I wasn't raised like that. That is a misinterpretation of your core. Your core is you're a godly soul. A godly soul doesn't matter if you haven't done it in 85 years. It doesn't matter. Your godly soul needs, this is its nourishment. This is its form of expression. Mickey.
So what you said earlier about performing the mitzvah, what have you, What if you have no intentions of performing the mitzvah, or if you intend to do it, but you're doing it for the absolute totally wrong reasons? Does it still apply?
Should have been here the other day.
That was yesterday's Torah class.
Yeah.
It still counts.
Mickey, you can't pick and
Still
choose.
counts.
You gotta come every day.
See, but at least I know the right question.
It's a good question.
So we learned that yesterday. You watched the video. We discussed that in great detail yesterday. So it's great that you connected that idea. The answer in short, Mickey, is that action is what matters. Intent is about quality. The intent is basically how much energy you're going to draw into the space, but the mitzvah, the core of the mitzvah is the action. And with that, I think I'm going to call it a day here. Thank you very much, everybody. Shalom.
Gooder.